The blood on his pillow was still wet when Carson Emmett opened his eyes to find the space beside him empty. And in that terrible moment between sleep and waking, he knew she had left him to die alone. His hand went to his side where the bullet had grazed him the night before, finding the neat bandage she must have wrapped while he slept. The pain was sharp but manageable, nothing like the ache that spread through his chest as he sat up in the small room above the saloon in Ely, Nevada. The September morning of 1878 was cool, the high desert air seeping through the gaps in the wooden walls. Carson swung his legs over the edge of the bed, his boots still on from the night before, and pressed his palm against the sheets where Sophia Vaughn had lain beside him just hours ago. They were cold. He had met her 3 months prior in the same saloon downstairs, where she dealt cards with hands as quick as her wit and smiled at him like she knew every secret he had ever kept. Carson had been drifting, working cattle drives from Texas to Nevada, saving money for land he was not sure he would ever buy. Sophia had been dealing cards and saving her own money, though for what purpose she never quite said. Her dark hair fell in waves past her shoulders, and her green eyes held a sadness that made him want to know every story behind them. Their courtship had been a slow burn in a place where nothing lasted. He would sit at her table, lose money on purpose just to watch her shuffle cards, and eventually she started saving him a seat. They would talk after her shifts ended, walking through the dusty streets of Ely as the mountains cast long shadows across the valley. She told him about growing up in St. Louis, how her father had been a riverboat gambler who lost everything, how her mother had died of fever when Sophia was 16. She told him she came west looking for something she could not name, and Carson understood because he was looking for the same thing. He told her about his family's ranch in Montana, burned down by a rival outfit when he was 20. He told her about his brother who died in the fire trying to save their horses. He told her things he had never spoken aloud, and she listened without judgment, her fingers sometimes finding his in the darkness between buildings. Last night, they had finally given in to what had been building between them for months. Carson had taken a job protecting a silver shipment, easy money for an experienced ranch hand who could shoot straight. But the ambush came at sunset just outside town, and though Carson got the silver safely to the assayer's office, he took a bullet for his trouble. Sophia had been waiting for him, had seen him stumble into the saloon holding his side, and she had taken him upstairs without a word. She cleaned the wound with whiskey and steady hands, her face close to his in the lamplight. When she finished, he caught her wrist and pulled her down to him, and she came willingly. They made love slowly, carefully, her hands gentle on his injured side. She whispered his name like a prayer, and he held her like she might disappear. Afterward, she lay with her head on his chest, tracing patterns on his skin, and he told her he loved her. She had gone very still, and then she kissed him and said nothing at all. Now Carson stood and found the note on the small table by the window. Her handwriting was elegant, the script of someone educated beyond what her current circumstances suggested. Carson, I am sorry. What we had was real, but I cannot stay. Do not follow me. You will only find trouble. You deserve better than what I can give you. Forgive me. S. He read it 3 times, trying to find meaning between the lines, trying to understand how someone could touch you the way she had, and then vanish like smoke. The pain in his side flared as he moved to the window, looking out at the street below. The town was waking up, miners heading to the copper pits, merchants opening their shops. Everything looked exactly as it had yesterday, but his world had tilted on its axis. Carson dressed quickly, checking his Colt revolver and counting the money in his pocket. He had $60 from the silver job, enough to chase her if he could pick up her trail. He went downstairs, where the saloon owner, a heavy-set man named Dutch, was sweeping sawdust from the floor. "You seen Sophia?" Carson asked, though he already knew the answer. Dutch looked up, his expression carefully neutral. "Left before dawn, paid up her room, settled her debts, said she was catching the morning stage." "Where was it headed?" Dutch paused, studying Carson's face. "Son, that girl made it clear she did not want to be followed." "I am not asking for your advice. I am asking where the stage was going." The older man sighed. "Austin. She bought a ticket to Austin." Carson knew Austin, a mining town about 90 miles west along the overland route. It would take the stage most of a day to get there, stopping at swing stations to change horses. If he rode hard, he might catch her before she disappeared into somewhere bigger, somewhere he would never find her. He went to the livery and saddled his horse, a sturdy bay gelding named Rust who had carried him across 3 states. The stable hand, a young man with a crooked nose, watched as Carson checked his supplies. "That bullet wound going to slow you down?" the kid asked. "Not enough to matter." Carson rode out of Ely as the sun cleared the eastern peaks, painting the sagebrush gold. The landscape was harsh and beautiful, mountains rising on all sides of the valley, the air so clear he could see for miles. He pushed Rust to a steady lope, eating up ground, his mind racing faster than the horse's hooves. Why had Sophia run? The question circled his thoughts like a hawk. He replayed their months together, looking for signs he had missed. She had been careful about her past, he realized now. She never mentioned family beyond her dead parents, never spoke of friends or places she had lived. She deflected personal questions with jokes or by turning the conversation back to him. He had thought she was just private, guarded in the way people were when they had been hurt. Now he wondered what she had been hiding. The sun climbed higher, and Carson stopped once to water Rust at a creek that cut through the valley. He refilled his canteen, ate jerky from his saddlebag, and checked the bandage on his side. It was holding, no fresh blood seeping through. Sophia had done good work. The thought made his chest tight. He rode on, following the stage road west. The terrain grew more rugged, the road climbing through passes and descending into valleys. Carson knew he was gaining time. A loaded stage could only move so fast, stopping regularly to rest the team. A single rider with a good horse and determination could cover the distance faster. As afternoon shadows lengthened, he crested a rise and saw the stage station below, a low adobe building with a corral and barn. Smoke rose from the chimney. He urged Rust down the slope, hope and dread warring in his gut. The station keeper was an older Mexican man named Miguel, who Carson had met on previous rides through the area. He came out of the building as Carson dismounted, his weathered face breaking into a smile that faded when he saw Carson's expression. "Amigo, you look like a man chasing ghosts." A woman, dark hair, green eyes, traveling alone. She would have come through on the morning stage from Ely. Miguel nodded slowly. She was here. Changed horses, had some coffee. The stage left maybe 2 hours ago. 2 hours. Carson could catch them before dark if he pushed hard. He started to remount, but Miguel caught his arm. Carson, that woman, she seemed troubled. Kept looking back the way she came, like she expected someone. Expecting me, or running from someone else. Miguel's dark eyes were serious. "Be careful." Something about her felt wrong, like she was in deeper trouble than a man could fix with good intentions. Carson pulled free gently. "I have to try." He rode hard for the next 2 hours, the sun sinking toward the western mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. His side ached, and Rust was lathered with sweat, but Carson pushed on. When he finally saw the stage ahead, crawling along the road like a beetle, relief flooded through him. He caught up as the stage pulled into another swing station, this one just a rough corral and shed. The driver, a grizzled man with tobacco stains in his beard, was climbing down from his seat as Carson rode up. "Need to talk to one of your passengers," Carson called out. The driver spat tobacco juice. Passengers paid for a ride, not to be harassed. Carson dismounted, leading Russ to the water trough. "Just need to talk. I will not cause trouble." The stage door opened and a portly man in a suit stepped out, followed by a woman in a bonnet and two rough-looking miners. "No, Sophia." Carson's stomach dropped. "This all of them?" He asked the driver, "All that is on this run?" "Why, a woman. Should have boarded in Ely this morning. Dark hair, green eyes." The driver scratched his beard. "Had a woman like that, yeah, but she got off at Miguel's station. Said she changed her mind about Austin, was going to wait for the eastbound." Carson felt like he had been punched. She had anticipated him following, had laid a false trail. The eastbound stage would take her back toward Ely, but she could get off anywhere along the route, could head north or south from any of a dozen points. She could disappear into the vast territory, and he would never find her, unless she had not gotten on the eastbound at all. Unless that was another misdirection. Carson thanked the driver and rode back toward Miguel's station, arriving as full darkness fell. Miguel had lit lanterns, and he came out when he heard hooves. "You did not catch her. She got off here. Driver said she was waiting for the eastbound." Miguel's face was troubled in the lamplight. "No eastbound came through yet. She told me she was continuing west. Why would she tell the driver something different? Because she knew Carson would talk to the driver. Because she was smart and desperate and did not want to be found." Carson felt admiration and frustration in equal measure. "Did you see which way she went?" "Into the station house for a while, then out to the barn. I was busy with the horses, did not pay much attention. When the stage left, I assumed she was on it." Carson went to the barn, holding a lantern high. The space was mostly empty except for hay and tack. In the back corner he found fresh hoof prints in the dust and a saddle missing from its place on the wall. "She took a horse," he said when he returned to Miguel. "Stole one right out from under you." The station keeper looked more amused than angry. "That little woman stole my horse. She has spirit, I give her that." "Which one did she take?" "My roan mare, looks like. Not the fastest, but sure-footed in rough country." Miguel paused. "The tracks head south into the mountains." "That is hard country, Carson. No towns for 30 miles, just mining camps and prospector shacks." "Why would she go that way?" Carson had no answer, but he knew he had to follow. He paid Miguel for the stolen horse and for a fresh mount, a sturdy buckskin that could handle mountain trails. Miguel packed him extra supplies, food and water and blankets, and Carson set out into the darkness with only the stars for light. The trail was difficult to follow at night, but Carson was an experienced tracker, trained by a Shoshone man who had worked his family's ranch. He found signs in the dust, a hoofprint here, a disturbed rock there. Sophia was heading into the Toyabe Range, following what looked like an old mining road. Carson rode through the night, stopping only to let the buckskin rest and to study the trail. The desert cold settled over the mountains, and he wrapped himself in his coat, breath misting in the air. The wound in his side throbbed with each step the horse took, but he ignored it. Somewhere ahead, Sophia was riding through the same darkness, and he needed her to know she did not have to run. Whatever she was afraid of, they could face it together. Dawn broke over the mountains in a wash of gold and pink, and Carson found himself in a landscape of twisted juniper and gray rock. The trail led higher, switchbacking up a ridge. He stopped at a small spring to water the buckskin and refill his canteen, and there in the mud he saw her tracks again, the roan mare's distinctive shoes. She had stopped here too, not more than a few hours before. He was gaining on her. The trail led over the ridge and down into a narrow canyon where a seasonal creek cut through red rock. Carson followed it carefully, eyes scanning for any sign of ambush. The canyon opened into a small valley, and there in the distance, he saw smoke rising from a crude cabin built against the canyon wall. Carson approached cautiously, his hand on his revolver. The roan mare was tied outside the cabin, head down, exhausted. Sophia was here. His heart hammered as he dismounted and walked to the door. It opened before he could knock, and there she stood, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, her green eyes wide with something that looked like both relief and despair. "You should not have come," she said, her voice breaking. "I had to." They stared at each other across the threshold, and Carson saw the exhaustion in her face, the shadows under her eyes. She looked like she had been crying. "Why did you run?" he asked softly. "After everything, why did you leave?" Sophia wrapped her arms around herself. "Because I am not who you think I am. Because if you knew the truth, you would not look at me the way you are looking at me now. Tell me. Whatever it is, just tell me." She turned away, walking into the cabin, and Carson followed. The interior was sparse, just a bunk and a stove and a table. On the table was a leather satchel, and Sophia stood staring at it like it held a poisonous snake. "My name is Sophia Vaughn. That part is true. But I did not come west looking for something I could not name. I came west running from my husband." The word hit Carson like a physical blow. "You are married, was married. He died 3 months before I came to Ely." She looked at him then, her eyes fierce. "And I killed him." Carson went very still. Outside, a raven called, harsh and lonely. Sophia continued, her voice steady now, like she had practiced this confession 1,000 times in her head. "His name was Richard Vaughn. He was a banker in St. Louis, wealthy and respectable. I married him when I was 18, and for the first year he was kind. Then things changed. He became jealous, possessive. He would not let me leave the house without him. He read my letters, chose my clothes, decided who I could speak to. When I tried to leave, he would find me and bring me back, and each time the punishment was worse." She touched her left arm unconsciously, and Carson saw the faint scar there, old and white. "The night I killed him, he came at me with a fireplace poker. I had hidden a pistol in the kitchen, one of his own guns. I shot him in the chest. He died in our parlor while I stood over him, and I felt nothing but relief." Sophia's voice was flat now, emotionless. "I could have claimed self-defense, but Richard's family had money and power. They would have destroyed me in court, made sure I hanged. So I took what money I could, burned the house to cover my tracks, and ran." Carson slowly sat down on the bunk, processing this. "The family, they are still looking for you. His brother, James Vaughn. He is relentless and he has resources. I heard he hired Pinkerton agents to track me. I have been moving every few months, never staying anywhere long." She looked at him with such sadness it hurt. "When I met you, I told myself I would keep moving soon, but you made me want to stay. You made me believe I could have a normal life. Last night after we were together, I knew I could not let you get dragged into this. If James finds me, he will kill anyone who helped me. I left to protect you." Carson stood, crossing to her. She backed away, but he was faster, catching her hands in his. "Look at me, Sophia. Look at me." She did, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I do not care about your past," he said. "I do not care that you killed a man who was trying to kill you. I care about you, about who you are right now. And I am telling you, you are worth chasing. You are worth riding 2 days through the desert to find. You are worth fighting for. Carson, you do not understand. James Vaughn will not stop. He has already tracked me across 4 states. It is only a matter of time before he finds me, and when he does, then we face him together. Or we run together. Whatever you need, I am here." Sophia pulled her hands free, turning away. "You cannot throw your life away for me. You have plans, a future. You are going to buy land, start a ranch. None of that matters without you. You barely know me. I know enough." Carson moved to stand beside her, not touching but close. "I know you deal cards with more skill than any gambler I have met. I know you laugh at terrible jokes and cry at sunsets. I know you bandaged my wound even though you were planning to leave. I know the way you say my name in the dark. That is enough for me." They stood in silence, the morning light streaming through the dirty window. Finally, Sophia spoke, her voice small. "I am scared, Carson. I am so tired of running, but I am scared. I know, but you do not have to run alone anymore." She turned to him then, searching his face for doubt or pity and finding neither. Slowly, she reached up and touched his cheek, her fingers trembling. "You really rode 2 days to find me. I would have ridden 2 months." She kissed him then, a kiss that tasted like salt and desperation and hope. Carson wrapped his arms around her, careful of his wound, and held her while she cried. When she finally pulled back, she was smiling through her tears. "You are insane, Carson Emmett. Probably. But I am your kind of insane." They stayed in the cabin that day, resting the horses and themselves. Sophia made coffee on the small stove, and they shared the food Carson had brought. She told him more about her life in St. Louis, the good parts before Richard changed, and Carson told her about his dreams for a ranch somewhere far from the memories of his family's tragedy. As evening fell, they made a plan. They would head west to California, to Sacramento, where Sophia knew a woman from St. Louis who could give them new identities. They would change their names, start over where the Vaughn family's reach did not extend. It was not perfect, but it was a chance. That night they slept together in the small bunk, Sophia's head on Carson's chest, his arms around her. For the first time in days, she felt safe. For the first time in years, Carson felt like he had found what he was looking for. They woke to the sound of horses. Carson was on his feet instantly, grabbing his revolver. Sophia went pale, her hand flying to her mouth. Through the window they saw 3 men dismounting, all armed. The one in front was tall and lean with cold eyes and a badge on his vest. A Pinkerton agent. "Sophia Vaughn," the man called out. "We know you are in there. Come out peacefully and nobody has to get hurt." Carson looked at Sophia, saw the terror in her face. She shook her head frantically. "That is not a real lawman. James Vaughn bought them. They will kill me and make it look like I resisted. Then we do not let them take you. Carson, there are 3 of them. I have faced worse odds." Before she could argue, Carson opened the door and stepped out, his revolver holstered but his hand near it. The Pinkerton agent looked him over with professional disdain. "This does not concern you, Cowboy. We are here for the woman." "On what charges?" Carson asked. "Murder and arson." "She killed her husband and burned down a house in St. Louis. We have a warrant. Let me see it." The agent's eyes narrowed. "I do not have to show you anything. Move aside." Carson stayed where he was. Sophia Vaughn acted in self-defense. Her husband was trying to kill her. Any jury would see that. That is for the courts to decide. Now step aside or we will move you. The other 2 men spread out, hands on their guns. Carson calculated the odds. He was fast and he had cover from the cabin. But 3-on-1 was not good, especially with a healing bullet wound. He needed an advantage. "Sophia," he called over his shoulder, "did you bring that satchel from the cabin?" He heard her moving inside. The Pinkerton agent's face changed, a flicker of uncertainty. "What is in the satchel?" the agent asked. "Proof," Carson lied smoothly. "Letters from Richard Vaughn's doctor documenting his violent episodes. Testimony from servants who witnessed abuse. Enough to clear her name in any court." It was a bluff, and the agent knew it, but it planted doubt. If the evidence existed, and if it made it to a real court, the Vaughn family's reputation would be ruined. The agent glanced at his companions, and in that moment of distraction, Sophia appeared in the doorway with the satchel in one hand and Carson's rifle in the other. She fired a shot into the air, the crack echoing off the canyon walls. The horses spooked, pulling at their reins. The three men dove for cover, and Carson drew his revolver, firing at the ground near the agent's feet. "Next one will not be a warning," Carson said. "Mount up and ride out." The agent's face was red with anger. "You are making a mistake, Cowboy. James Vaughn will not forget this. Tell James Vaughn that if he comes after Sophia again, he will answer to me, and unlike his dead brother, I shoot back." For a long moment, the situation balanced on a knife's edge. Then the agent slowly stood, his hands visible, and gestured to his men. They backed toward their horses, mounted, and rode out of the canyon at a gallop. Carson did not lower his gun until they were out of sight. Then he turned to Sophia, who was shaking so hard she could barely hold the rifle. He took it from her gently and pulled her close. "That was incredibly stupid," she said into his shirt. "They will come back with more men. Then we better get moving." They saddled the horses quickly, taking only what they could carry. As they rode out of the canyon heading west, Sophia looked back once at the crude cabin that had been her hiding place. "You think they will really come after us?" Carson reached across the space between their horses and took her hand. "Yes, but we will be long gone by then." They rode hard for 3 days, following old trails through the mountains, avoiding towns where Pinkerton agents might be watching. Carson's wound ached, but he ignored it. Sophia proved to be an excellent rider, keeping pace without complaint. At night, they camped in hidden valleys, making small fires and taking turns keeping watch. On the 4th day, they descended from the mountains into a broad valley where the Carson River flowed through cottonwood groves. In the distance, Carson could see a small settlement, smoke rising from a dozen buildings. "That is Genoa," he said. "Oldest town in Nevada territory. We can get supplies there, maybe here if anyone is asking about us." They rode in cautiously, but the town seemed peaceful, just farmers and ranchers going about their business. They tied their horses outside a general store, and Sophia pulled her bonnet low over her face. Inside, Carson bought flour, coffee, and ammunition while Sophia pretended to browse fabric. The storekeeper, a friendly man with spectacles, chatted amiably as he tallied their purchases. "You folks just passing through or looking to settle?" "Just passing through," Carson said. "Heading to California." "Good timing. Harvest season, plenty of work in the Sacramento Valley if you need it." The storekeeper leaned in conspiratorially. "Though I would avoid the roads north of here for a bit. Heard there is some trouble with Pinkerton men harassing travelers. Looking for some fugitive woman, asking everyone if they have seen her." Carson kept his face neutral. "That's so." "Yeah. Between you and me, I do not much care for Pinkertons. Act like they own the place. But they have been hanging around Carson City, checking the stage stations." He looked at Sophia, who was examining a bolt of calico with intense concentration. "Your wife might want to keep her head down until you are clear of the area." "Appreciate the advice," Carson said, paying quickly. They left town heading south, keeping off the main roads. That night, camped by the river, Sophia sat close to Carson, staring into the fire. "They are everywhere," she said quietly. "How can we outrun them? We do not outrun them. We disappear." Carson had been thinking about this. "We head into the Sierra Nevada, find one of the small mining camps. Places too remote for Pinkertons to bother with. We change our names, live quiet. Eventually, James Vaughn will give up or die, and we will be free." "That could be years, Carson. You cannot put your life on hold for that long." My life started the day I met you in Ely. Everything before that was just marking time. Sophia turned to look at him, the firelight dancing in her green eyes. How can you say things like that and mean them? Because they are true. She kissed him then, slow and sweet, and they lay down together under the stars. Later, wrapped in blankets with Sophia asleep in his arms, Carson watched the sky and thought about the future. It would not be easy, living on the run, always looking over their shoulders, but as long as they were together, he could face anything. They crossed into California a week later, following the immigrant trail over the Sierra Nevada. The mountains were magnificent and terrifying, granite peaks scratching at the sky, pine forests so dense the sun barely reached the ground. They passed abandoned wagons from earlier migrations, grim reminders of how unforgiving the landscape could be. On the eastern slope of the Sierras, they found what they were looking for. A small mining camp called Colville, nestled in a valley where a creek ran swift and cold. Maybe 20 cabins scattered among the trees, a general store that doubled as a saloon, and a stamp mill where miners processed ore. It was remote, hard to reach, and perfect. They introduced themselves as Carson and Sarah Edwards, a married couple looking to try their hand at prospecting. The miners accepted them without much interest. People came and went in camps like this, and everyone had their own reasons for being there. They rented a small cabin from a widow named Mrs. Patterson who owned several properties in camp. It was rough but sturdy, with a stone fireplace and a loft for sleeping. Sophia, now Sarah, set about making it a home while Carson worked at the stamp mill, earning enough to keep them fed. For the first time since fleeing St. Louis, Sophia felt like she could breathe. The mountains protected them, the community accepted them, and Carson was with her. She planted a small garden beside the cabin, grew herbs and vegetables. She sewed clothes and traded her skills in exchange for supplies. She learned to bake bread in the fireplace and to can fruit for winter. Carson thrived too. The work was hard but honest, and he liked the simplicity of it. He befriended the other miners, men who asked no questions and expected none answered. In the evenings, he would come home to find Sophia waiting, and they would sit on the porch of their cabin and watch the sun set behind the peaks. 3 months passed in peace. Then one November morning, Carson came back from the mill to find Sophia white-faced and shaking. A stranger had been in the store, asking questions. A tall man with cold eyes and a Pinkerton badge. "He showed my picture," Sophia whispered. "The old one from St. Louis, from before I cut my hair." Mrs. Patterson saw it, but she did not say anything. She just told him no one like that lived here. Carson felt ice in his stomach. Did he believe her? I do not know. He rode out heading north, but Carson, if he comes back, if he searches the camp, we will be gone before then. Carson made a decision. "Pack what you need, we leave tonight." They worked quickly, bundling clothes and food, saddling the horses they had bought with Carson's mill wages. As darkness fell, they slipped out of Colville, heading south through the forest. Behind them, the lights of the camp glowed warm and safe, a life they were abandoning. They rode through the night, following trails that were barely more than deer paths. The November cold bit through their coats and frost glittered on the trees. At dawn, they found a shepherd's hut abandoned for the winter and holed up inside, exhausted. Sophia cried, not loudly but with the deep, wrenching sobs of someone who had reached their limit. Carson held her, his own heart breaking. How long could they keep running? How many lives would they have to start and abandon? "I am so sorry," Sophia said when she could speak. "I am so sorry I dragged you into this. You did not drag me into anything. I chose this. I choose you. But it is not fair to you. You deserve a real life, not running and hiding." Carson cupped her face in his hands, making her look at him. Listen to me, Sophia Vaughn. You are not a burden. You are not a curse. You are the woman I love, and I would rather spend my life on the run with you than comfortable and safe without you. Do you understand? She nodded, tears still streaming down her face. I love you too. I have loved you since that first night in Ely when you told me about your brother, and I saw that you understood grief the way I did. They held each other as the morning light grew stronger, and outside the hut, the world went on without them. They could not stay in the hut long. Carson knew the Pinkerton agent would expand his search if he did not find them in Colville. They needed a real plan, a permanent solution. We could go to Mexico, Carson suggested. Get far enough south that the Vaughn family's reach does not extend. Or we could go east, Sophia said slowly. Back toward Nevada, to the Mormon settlements near Salt Lake. They do not much like federal authorities. We might find sanctuary there. They argued their options as they traveled south through the mountains, always moving, never staying in one place more than a night. The journey was grueling. The weather turned bitter, snow falling in the high passes. Their supplies dwindled, and Carson's old wound began to ache in the cold. On the 10th day, they descended into a valley where a small ranch sat beside a frozen creek. Smoke rose from the chimney and cattle grazed in a meadow cleared of snow. It looked like something from a dream, peaceful and permanent. We should stop, Sophia said. Ask if we can shelter in their barn for the night. You are exhausted and that wound is bothering you again. Carson did not deny it. The constant travel had taken its toll. They rode up to the ranch house and a man came out, rifle in hand but not pointed at them. He was in his 50s, weathered and cautious. Help you folks, he called. Looking for shelter for the night, Carson said. We can pay or work for it. The rancher studied them, seeing their exhaustion, their thin horses. His face softened slightly. I am Walter Freeman. That is my wife Mary inside. We do not usually take in strangers, but you look like you have had a rough go of it. Barn is warm and Mary will bring you supper. They settled the horses in the barn, and true to Walter's word, Mary Freeman brought them hot stew and fresh bread. She was a kind woman with gray streaks in her brown hair, and she looked at Sophia with concern. You sick, dear? You look pale. Just tired, Sophia said, though Carson noticed she barely touched her food. That night, sleeping in the hay, Carson heard Sophia being sick outside the barn. He went to her, held her hair back, and a suspicion began to form in his mind. How long have you been sick in the mornings? He asked gently. Sophia wiped her mouth, her face stricken. 2 weeks, maybe 3. I thought it was just the travel, the stress. Sophia, when was your last monthly? She went very still, counting back in her mind. September, before I left Ely, 2.5 months. The night they spent together in that room above the saloon had created more than just a bond between them. Carson felt a wave of emotion so powerful he had to sit down in the snow. You are pregnant, he said. Oh God. Sophia put her face in her hands. Oh God, Carson, I am so sorry. Sorry. He pulled her hands away, making her look at him. Sophia, this is not something to be sorry for. This is a gift. A gift. We are on the run from Pinkerton agents and a vengeful family, living in barns and eating whatever we can find, and I am pregnant. How is that a gift? Carson smiled, a real smile for the first time in weeks. Because it means we have something to fight for beyond just survival. It means we are building a future, even if we do not know what it looks like yet. Sophia stared at him, searching his face for doubt or fear and finding only joy. Despite everything, despite the impossible situation, Carson looked happy. And slowly, tentatively, she let herself feel it too. Happy, terrified but happy. We need to find somewhere permanent, she said. I cannot keep riding like this, not with a baby. I know. Carson helped her stand, his mind already working through possibilities. "We will figure it out. I promise you I will find us a safe place." In the morning, Carson talked with Walter Freeman, feeling the man out. Over breakfast in the ranch house, Walter told them his story. He had come west 30 years ago, built this ranch from nothing. He and Mary had lost their only son to pneumonia 5 years back, and since then, it had been just the two of them trying to keep the place running. "Gets harder every year," Walter admitted. "I am not as young as I was, and this valley can be brutal in winter. Been thinking about selling, moving somewhere easier, but Mary will not hear of it. This is where our boy is buried." An idea began to form in Carson's mind. What if you had help? Permanent help, not just hired hands who drift off come spring. Walter looked at him shrewdly. "You offering? Maybe, if the terms were right." Carson glanced at Sophia, who nodded encouragingly. "My wife and I are looking for a place to settle. I grew up on a ranch in Montana, no cattle and horses. She is good with her hands, can sew and cook and manage a household. We would work hard, take wages or a share of the profits, whatever you think fair." Walter exchanged a look with his wife. Mary spoke for the first time. "You are running from something, I can always tell." Carson hesitated, but Sophia reached across the table and took Mary's hand. "My first husband was a violent man. I left him and his family wants revenge. My husband now, Carson, he gave up everything to protect me. We are not criminals. We just want a chance at a peaceful life." Mary squeezed her hand. "I thought as much. I have seen that hunted look before. My sister had it when she left her first husband." She looked at Walter. "We could use the help, and it would be nice to have young people around again." Walter was more cautious. "If these people come looking, they could bring trouble here." "They could," Carson agreed. "But this valley is remote. We came up from the south, saw no roads or towns for 20 miles. If we keep our heads down, use our married name, chances are no one will find us." "What name are you going by?" Carson and Sarah Edwards. Walter thought about it, his weathered face thoughtful. Finally, he nodded. "All right, we will try it for the winter. You work hard, prove yourselves. We will talk about a permanent arrangement come spring." They shook on it, and for the first time in months, Carson felt hope. They had a roof over their heads, work to do, and a chance to disappear into the obscurity of a remote mountain valley. The winter was hard but good. Carson worked alongside Walter, mending fences, feeding cattle, cutting firewood. The work was familiar and satisfying, and Walter proved to be a fair man, generous with his knowledge. Sophia helped Mary with the household, learning to preserve food and manage the ranch accounts. As her pregnancy progressed, Mary became protective of her, making sure she rested and ate well. In the evenings, the four of them would sit by the fire, and slowly, trust built. Carson told them the full story, about Richard Vaughn and the Pinkerton agents, about their flight across Nevada and into California. Walter and Mary listened without judgment, and when Carson finished, Walter simply said, "A man has a right to defend himself and his family. In my book, you have done nothing wrong." Christmas came, cold and bright, and Mary made a feast. They sang carols, and Sophia cried at the simple joy of it, at having something that felt like family again. Carson held her close and promised that their child would know this kind of peace, this kind of love. As spring approached, Sophia's belly grew round and the baby kicked strong. Mary was there to reassure her through the fears, having been through it herself. Walter taught Carson the intricacies of running a ranch, preparing him for more responsibility. In April, Walter made them an offer. "I have been thinking. Mary and I are not getting any younger. We talked about it and we would like to make you partners, equal shares in the ranch. When we pass on, it will be yours. In exchange, you keep it running and let us live out our days here in peace." Carson was stunned. "Walter, that is too generous. It is practical. This ranch needs young blood. You have proven yourselves." "And besides," Walter smiled, "Mary has taken a shine to Sarah. She wants to be a grandmother to that baby." They accepted with tears and gratitude. For the first time since fleeing St. Louis, Sophia felt safe. Carson felt like he had found the purpose he had been seeking. They were no longer running. They were home. The baby came in June, a long labor that terrified Carson but that Mary and the local midwife handled with calm expertise. When it was over, Carson held his son, a red-faced, squalling bundle of life, and felt his world shift on its axis. "He is perfect," Sophia whispered, exhausted but radiant. "What should we name him?" Carson looked down at the baby, at the tiny hands and dark hair. "James," he said, and at Sophia's sharp look he smiled. "Not for your husband's brother, for my own, the one who died in the fire. He deserves to be remembered by something good." Sophia touched the baby's cheek. "James Edwards. It is a good name." They settled into a rhythm, life on the ranch measured by the seasons and the baby's growth. Carson and Walter worked the cattle, expanded the herd, built new corrals. Sophia and Mary managed the household, canning fruit and vegetables, sewing clothes, baking bread. Little James grew from infant to toddler, learning to walk in the meadow by the creek, surrounded by mountains and sky. 2 years passed without incident. Then one August morning, a rider came up the valley road. Carson saw him first, a tall man on a good horse, and his blood ran cold. Something about the way the man sat his horse, the way he scanned the ranch, spoke of purpose and authority. Carson went to meet him, his hand near his revolver. As the man drew closer, Carson saw he was older, maybe 50, well-dressed and grim-faced. Not a Pinkerton then, but someone else. The man reined in his horse and looked at Carson with eyes that were familiar. Green eyes like Sophia's. "I am looking for Sophia Vaughn," the man said. "I was told by some miners in Colville that a woman matching her description might have passed through here 2 years ago. I have been searching every ranch and settlement in these mountains." Carson's hand moved to his gun. "Who is asking?" "My name is Thomas Vaughn. I am her cousin." Cousin, not brother-in-law, not James Vaughn. Carson kept his hand on his weapon. "What do you want with her?" "To tell her she is free. James Vaughn is dead. Died of a heart attack 6 months ago. The hunt is over. She can come home." Carson felt like the ground had shifted beneath him. "How do I know you are telling the truth?" Thomas reached slowly into his saddlebag and pulled out a newspaper. He handed it to Carson, who read the headline. "St. Louis banker James Vaughn dies at 48. The article detailed James Vaughn's death, his funeral, and the disposition of his estate. It was real. The threat that had driven them across mountains and deserts, that had turned them into fugitives, was gone. "Where is she?" Thomas asked. "Is Sophia alive?" Carson studied the man, seeing genuine concern in his face. "Why do you care?" "Because she is family. Because I never believed she murdered Richard in cold blood. I knew what kind of man he was, even if the rest of the family refused to see it. When James started his crusade, I tried to stop him, but he would not listen. After he died, I made it my mission to find Sophia and tell her she could stop running." The door to the ranch house opened, and Sophia stepped out, carrying James on her hip. She froze when she saw Thomas, her face going white. "Thomas." Her voice was barely a whisper. The older man dismounted, his face breaking into a smile. "Sophie, thank God. I have been looking for you for months." Sophia handed the baby to Mary, who had followed her out and walked slowly toward her cousin. "I do not understand. Why are you here?" "To bring you good news. James is dead. The Pinkertons are called off. You are free, Sophie. You can come home." For a long moment, Sophia just stared at him. Then she began to laugh, a slightly hysterical sound. Carson moved to her side, putting his arm around her. "I cannot come home," she said when she could speak. "St. Louis is not my home anymore. This is my home. Carson is my home." Thomas looked between them, understanding dawning. "You are married." "Yes, and that is our son, James, and this is our ranch, our life. I am grateful you came to tell me truly, but I am not going back." Thomas nodded slowly. "I understand. I hoped you had found peace somewhere." He looked at Carson. "You are the man who protected her." "I am the man who loves her," Carson corrected. "Nothing more complicated than that." "Then I owe you a debt of gratitude." Thomas reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. "This is for you, Sophie. Your inheritance from your father. It has been in trust all these years. Now that James is gone, there is no one to contest your claim. It is not a fortune, but it is enough to help you build whatever life you want." Sophia took the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a bank draft for $5,000, more money than she and Carson had seen in their lives combined. "I do not know what to say. Say you are happy. That is all I need to hear. I am happy. Truly, for the first time in years, I am happy." Thomas stayed for dinner, meeting the Freemans and getting to know his young cousin by marriage. He told them stories of the Vaughn family, the good ones, the ones from before everything went wrong. He held little James and told Sophia she had done well for herself. As evening fell, he prepared to leave. "If you ever need anything, write to me in St. Louis," he said, mounting his horse. "You have family there, Sophie, not many, but some who care about you. Thank you, Thomas, for everything." They watched him ride away, back down the valley and out of their lives. When he was gone, Sophia turned to Carson, the envelope still clutched in her hand. "It is over," she said wonderingly. "It is really over." Carson pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "No, it is just beginning." With the money from Sophia's inheritance, they bought out Walter and Mary's share of the ranch, allowing the older couple to retire comfortably. They expanded the herd, built a new barn, and added a room onto the house for the growing family. A year later, Sophia gave birth to a daughter they named Mary, after the woman who had been like a mother to her. 2 years after that came another son, William. The ranch prospered under Carson's management. He proved to have a gift for breeding horses, and the Freeman Edwards Ranch became known for producing quality stock. Sophia kept the accounts and managed the household, her intelligence and education finally put to use in ways that brought her joy rather than pain. Walter and Mary lived to see all 3 grandchildren grow, passing peacefully in their sleep within months of each other when little William was 5. The ranch passed fully to Carson and Sophia, a legacy of kindness repaid. Years rolled by, measured in cattle drives and harvests, in children growing and learning. James became a serious boy who loved horses. Mary was wild and fearless, climbing trees and riding before she could walk steadily. William was the thoughtful one, always reading when he could find a book. Carson and Sophia grew into their partnership, a marriage forged in adversity and tempered by peace. They had their fights, their disagreements about money or how to raise the children, but underneath it all was a foundation of unshakable love. Carson still looked at Sophia like she was the most precious thing in his world, and she still touched his face with wonder that he had chosen to chase her across the desert. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Carson took Sophia riding up into the mountains, to a high meadow where wildflowers bloomed in impossible colors. They sat on a blanket, eating the lunch she had packed, and looked out over the valley that held their ranch, their life. "Do you ever regret it?" Sophia asked. "Giving up the life you might have had to chase after a fugitive card dealer," Carson pretended to consider this seriously. "Well, I could have had a quiet life as a ranch hand, drifting from job to job, dying alone in some boarding house." Instead, I got you 3 amazing children, a successful ranch, and more adventure than most men see in a lifetime. Yes, I regret it terribly." She hit his arm, laughing. "I am serious. So am I." He took her hand, lacing their fingers together. "Sophia, that morning I woke up to find you gone. I had a choice. I could let you go, tell myself it was for the best, move on with my life. But something in me knew that if I did, I would spend the rest of my days wondering what if. You were worth chasing. You were worth 2 days of hard riding and confronting armed men and giving up everything I knew. You will always be worth it." Sophia leaned against his shoulder, watching an eagle circle in the blue sky. "I used to think I was cursed, that everyone I loved would either hurt me or I would bring them pain. Then you rode after me, and you kept choosing me over and over. You saved me, Carson, not just from James Vaughn or the Pinkertons, but from believing I did not deserve to be saved. You saved me too. I was just going through motions before you. Now I am living." They sat in comfortable silence, the mountain breeze carrying the scent of pine and wildflowers. Below, their ranch was a cluster of buildings beside the creek, smoke rising from the chimney where their children waited with the nanny they had hired. It was a far cry from that dingy room above a saloon in Ely, but the thread connecting then to now was unbroken, a line of love and choice and determination. Years continued to pass. The children grew into adults, James taking over more of the ranch operations, Mary marrying a teacher from Sacramento and moving to the city, William going east to study law. Carson's hair turned gray, and Sophia's face lined with laugh lines. They became grandparents, then great-grandparents, the ranch passing down through generations. On Carson's 70th birthday, the whole family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. There were 40 people there, children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all of them descendants of that desperate chase across the Nevada desert so many years ago. They roasted a steer and drank wine and told stories long into the night. James, now a gray-haired man of 50 himself, raised a toast. "To my father, who taught me that love is not just a feeling but a choice you make every day. And to my mother, who taught me that strength comes in many forms." Everyone drank, and Carson felt Sophia's hand slip into his, familiar and right. Later, when the party had wound down and the guests had gone to bed, they sat on the porch as they had done 10,000 times before, watching the stars wheel overhead. "You remember the night we met?" Sophia asked. "I remember everything. The way you smiled when you beat me at cards, the way your hair caught the lamplight, the way you looked at me like you were trying to decide if I was worth the risk. I decided you were worth the risk. Best decision you ever made." Sophia laughed softly. "Second best. The best decision was getting on that horse and letting you find me. I almost did not, you know. I almost kept running. But something told me to stop, to wait, to see if you really would chase me. I would have chased you to the end of the earth. I know that now. I knew it when you walked into that cabin in the mountains with that look on your face, like I was the only thing in the world that mattered." They sat quietly, and Carson felt the weight of years, both the burden and the gift. His body was old now, his hands stiff with arthritis, his vision not what it once was, but his love for the woman beside him was as fierce and bright as it had been that morning he woke to find her gone. "No regrets?" he asked, echoing her question from so long ago. "Not a single one. You gave me the life I did not know I was looking for. You gave me safety and love and a family. You gave me a home. You gave me the same. You gave me purpose. You made me into the man I wanted to be." Sophia leaned her head on his shoulder, and they watched the stars together. Two people who had chosen each other across impossible odds and built a life that would echo through generations. Carson died peacefully in his sleep 2 years later, at the age of 72. He passed away with Sophia holding his hand, their children gathered around the bed. His last words were worth chasing, and Sophia knew exactly what he meant. She lived another 5 years, sharp and clear-minded to the end, presiding over the ranch and her family like a queen. She told her great-grandchildren stories of the Wild West, of a time when love meant risking everything, of a cowboy who rode 2 days to tell her she was worth chasing forever. When she died at 80 years old, she was buried beside Carson on the hill overlooking the ranch, where wildflowers bloomed every spring on her headstone James had carved. Sophia Vaughn Emmett, beloved wife and mother, she was worth chasing forever. The ranch continued for another 100 years, passed down through the family, the story of Carson and Sophia becoming legend. Great-great-grandchildren would stand at their graves and hear the tale of how their ancestors met in a saloon in Ely, how Carson woke to find her gone, how he tracked her for 2 days through the Nevada desert to tell her she was worth more than running. They would hear how love triumphed over fear, how 2 wounded people found healing in each other, how a choice made in desperation became a legacy of devotion. And in the retelling, the story never lost its power, because at its heart was a simple truth that resonated across generations: that real love is not convenient or easy, that it requires courage and sacrifice, that sometimes you have to chase what matters most, and that when you find it, you hold on with everything you have. Carson and Sophia's story became a testament to that truth, a reminder that the greatest adventures often begin with a choice to not give up, to keep chasing, to believe that something, someone, is worth whatever it costs to claim them. In the end, it was not about the chase itself, but what the chase represented: a refusal to accept loss, a determination to fight for love, a willingness to see the person beneath the fear and pain and to say, unequivocally, "You are worth it. You have always been worth it. You will always be worth chasing, to the end of my days and beyond." That was the legacy Carson and Sophia left behind. Not just a successful ranch or a large family, but an example of what love looks like when it is tested by fire and emerges stronger. An example that echoed through the generations, inspiring their descendants to choose love boldly, to fight for what mattered, to never give up on the people worth chasing. And so the story lived on, told and retold, a love story from the Wild West that proved some things are truly timeless: courage, devotion, and the power of one person choosing another again and again, across every trial and distance, until the end of forever.